भगवते वासुदेवाय ॐ नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय ॐ नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय Canto 1 Chapter 6 Text 20 एवं यतन्तं विजने मामाहा गोचरो गिरा गम्भीरश्लक्षणया वाचा शुचा प्रशमयत्रिव.
Hare Krishna. Seeing my attempts in that lonely place, the personality of Godhead, who is transcendental to all mundane description, spoke to me with gravity and pleasing words just to mitigate my grief.
Text 21 Hantansmina janmani bhavan mamam drashtumiharhati avipakvakashayanam durdashoham kuyoginam.
O Narada, the Lord spoke, I regret that during this lifetime you will not be able to see me anymore. Those who are incomplete in service and who are not completely free from all material things can hardly see me.
Text 22 Sakradaya darshitam rupam etat kamaya te nagha matkama shanakai sadhu sarvan munchati richayan.
O virtuous one, you have only once seen my person, and this is just to increase your desire for me, because the more you hanker for me, the more you will be freed from all material desires.
Text 23 Satsevaya dirghayapi jata maidranamati hitva vadhyamimam lokam ganta majna natamasi.
By service of the absolute truth, even for a few days, a devotee attains firm and fixed intelligence in me. Consequently, he goes on to become my associate in the transcendental world after giving up the present deplorable material worlds.
Text 24 Matirmai nibadhyayam na vipadyeta karhichit praja sarga nirodhepi smritischa madanugrahat.
Intelligence engaged in my devotion cannot be thwarted at any time, even at the time of creation, as well as at the time of inhalation. Your remembrance will continue by my mercy.
Text 25 Etavaduktvo pararam tanmahad bhutam nabholingamalingamishwaram aham chatasmai mahatam mahiyase Shishnarpanamam vidhate nukampitaha.
Then that supreme authority personified by sound and unseen by eyes, but most wonderful, stopped speaking. Feeling a sense of gratitude, I offered my obeisances unto him, bowing my head.
Text 26 Namanyanantasya hatatra papathan guhyani bhadrani kritani cha smaran Gam paryantamastuştamanagaspraha kalam pratikshan vimado vimatsaraha.
Thus I began chanting the holy name and fame of the Lord by repeated recitation, ignoring all the formalities of the material world. Such chanting and remembering of the transcendental pastimes of the Lord are benedictory. So doing, I travel all over the earth, full satisfied, humble, and unenvious.
Text 27 Evam Krishna Mater Brahman Nasaktasya Malatmanaha Kalaha Pradurbhut Kale Tadir Saudamani Yatha.
And so, O Brahmana, Vasudeva, in due course of time, I, who was fully absorbed in thinking of Krishna and who therefore had no attachments, being completely freed from all material taints, met with death. death, as lighting and illumination occur simultaneously.
Text 28. Prayujmane maitam shuddham bhagavatim tanum arabdha karma nirvano nyapatat pancha bhautikaha.
Having been awarded a transcendental body befitting an associate of the personality of Godhead, I quit the body made of 5 material elements, and thus all acquired fruitive results of work, karma, stopped.
Text 29. Kalpanta idmadaye shayanim yusdanvataha shisheshoranu pranam vivashenantaraham vibho.
At the end of the millennium, when the personality of Godhead, Lord Narayana, lay down within the water of devastation, Brahma began to enter into him along with all creative elements, and I also entered through his breathing.
Text 30. Sahasrayuga paryante utthayedam sisrakshataha marirchim rishaya pranebhyoham jagire.
After 4.3 million solar years, when Brahma awake to create again by the will of the Lord, all the rishis like Marichi, Angira, Atri, and so on were created from the transcendental body of the Lord, and I also appeared along with them.
Text 31. Antarbahishch lokam strin paryemaskanditabhrataha anugrahan mahavishnor vighata gati kvachit.
Since then, by the grace of the Almighty Vishnu, I travel everywhere without restriction, both in the transcendental world and in the 3 division of the material world. This is because I'm fixed in unbroken devotional service of the Lord.
Text 32. Devadatta veenam swarbrahma vibhushitam murchitva hari katham gayamanaschramyaham.
And thus I travel, constantly singing the transcendental message of the glories of the Lord, vibrating this instrument called Veena, which is charged with transcendental sound and which was given to me by Lord Krishna.
Text 33. Pragayataha swaviryani tirthapada priyashravaha ahuta iva me shighram darshanam yati chetasi.
The Supreme Lord Krishna, whose glories and activities are pleasing to hear, at once appears on the seat of my heart, as if called for, as soon as I begin to chant his holy activities.
Text 34. Etathaya turachittanam matra sparshechaya muhu bhava sindhu plavo drashto haricharyanu varnanam.
It is personally experienced by me that those who are always full of cares and anxieties due to desiring contact of the sense with their objects can cross the ocean of nuisance on a most suitable boat, the constant chanting of the transcendental activities of the personality of Godhead.
Text 35. Yamadirbhirayogapathe kamalobahato muhu mukunda sevaya yadvat tathatmadhyana shamyati.
It is true that by practicing restraint of the senses by the yoga system, one can get relief from the disturbance of desire and lust. But this is not sufficient to give satisfaction to the soul, for this satisfaction is derived from devotional service to the personality of Godhead.
Text 36. Sarvam tadadim akyatam yat prashtoham tvaya nagha janma karma rahasyam me bhavataschatmatoshanam.
O Veshadeva, you are freed from all sins. Thus, I have explained my birth and activities for self-realization as you asked. All these will be conducive for your personal satisfaction also.
Text 37. Sut Uvacha Evam Sambhasya Bhagwan Narado Vasavi Sutam Amantrya Veenam Ranyan Yayo Yatrachiko Muni.
Sutta Goswami said, thus addressing Rishyadeva, Sri Narada Muni took leave of him and vibrating on his Veena instrument, he left to wander at his free will.
Text 38. Aho Devarshir Dhanyoyam Yat Kirtim Shangadhanvana Gayan Madhyam Idam Tantrya Ramatya Turam Jagat.
All glory and success to Srila Narada Muni because he glorifies the activities of the personality of Godhead, and so doing he himself takes pleasure and also enlivens all the distressed souls of the universe. Hare Krishna. Please forgive me.
Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you very much, Neha Mataji and Mitali Mataji. That was really nice. Thank you.
Thank you.
Just give me 1 minute while I get my PowerPoint up. Okay. Okay, so we're going to be doing chapter 1, Canto 1, chapter 6, verse number 36. So before we start with the actual verse, we'll recite some prayers. Narayanam namaskrityam naram chaiva narottamam devim saraswatim vyasam tato jayamudirayet shrinvantam swakatha krishna punya shravana kirtana hridayantasto bhadrani vidunoti shruhatsatam nashtapraeshu bhadreshu nityam bhagavata sevaya bhagavati uttama shloke bhaktir bhavati naishtiki. Okay, so today's verse. Okay, so verse number 36 from Canto 1, chapter 6. This is conversations that Narada Muni has been having with Vyasadeva, and in fact, this is the last verse because the next 2 verses are just concluding. This is the last verse where Narada Muni is speaking to Vyasadeva. Sarvam tadidam akhyatam yat prashtoham tavyanaga janma karma rahasyam me bhavataschatmatoshanam. Translation and purport by Srila Prabhupada. Translation. O Vyasadeva, you are freed from all sins. Thus I have explained my birth and activities for self-realization as you asked. All this will be conducive for your personal satisfaction also. Does anybody want to read the purport?
Yes, please, Mataji. Hare Krishna.
Okay, please go ahead.
The process of devotional activities from the beginning to the stage of transcendence is all duly explained to satisfy the inquiries of Vyasadeva. Narada has explained how the seeds of devotional service were sown by transcendental association and how they gradually developed by hearing the sages. The result of such hearing is detached from worldliness, so much so that even a small boy could receive the death news of his mother, who was his only caretaker, as the blessing of God. And at once he took the opportunity to search out the Lord. A sincere urge for having an interview with the Lord was also granted to him. Although it is not possible for anyone to see the Lord with mundane eyes, he also explained how by execution of pure transcendental service, one can get rid of the fruitive action of accumulated work, and how he transformed his material body into a spiritual one. The spiritual body is alone able to enter into the spiritual realm of the Lord, and no one but a pure devotee is eligible to enter into the kingdom of God. All the mysteries of transcendental realization are duly experienced by Narada Muni himself, and therefore, by hearing such an authority, one can have some idea of the results of devotional life, which are hardly delineated even in the original texts of the Vedas. In the Vedas and Upanishads, there are only indirect hints to all this. Nothing is directly explained there, and therefore Srimad Bhagavatam is the mature fruit of all the Vedic trees of literatures. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Shriji Mataji. So before we continue, we'll just recite our prayers. Om Ajnanatimirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Guru Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhan Vidamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpatirubhascha Kripa Sindhu Bevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasati Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Dinamine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschata Deshatarine. Okay. Right. So we have been discussing these conversations between Narad Muni and Vyasadeva. Very, very important chapter, because here actually Narad Muni is talking about his entire spiritual journey. So it is very encouraging, inspiring for all of us who read and understand these verses of this particular chapter. And now finally, when Narad Muni is now ready to leave Vyasadeva, and he talks about, how now he'll be freed from his sins and this will help him. And in the purport, so I've picked up some very important points from the purport, which I think will help all of us. So in the purport, Prabhupada is talking about how the seeds of devotional service sown by transcendence, by association of devotees. So what is important to understand is that we can only understand or even begin to realize who we are, what is our relation with Krishna, if we are fortunate enough to get the association of devotees. When we talk about devotees, we are talking about, they may not be completely pure devotees, but we are talking about devotees who have developed faith in Krishna. Because they have developed faith, so they can also invoke the same faith in us. Bear in mind that this faith is natural in all of us. It is not something that has to be brought from the outside. It is within all of us. It only needs awakening. We have forgotten it, and it needs awakening. So, real faith is not something that is being imposed on us. It is just awakened with the right kind of environment. So, like an analogy that our acharyas use is, if we sow a seed and if we water that seed regularly and look after, then we know that in some time, when it is the right time, then there will be a plant growing and there will be flowers in that pot which we are looking after. In the same way, sadhu sangha, association of devotees, is most important. Otherwise, this very strong illusory energy will not allow us to realize our true selves. And we will not go into each stage of Bhakti Yoga because we've done this a couple of times. But it says here, you will see that the first stage is to develop faith. And that faith comes with people who have the faith. Like, for example, even in our material life, when somebody speaks to us, let's take for an example, if you're ill and you have to go to a doctor, many a times you will speak to other your friends who probably either have been in the same situation or know somebody, and then the friends will advise you that this doctor is very good for this particular thing, and you develop faith. It's not that you've experienced it firsthand, but you develop that faith. In the same way, when you are with like-minded people, you develop that faith. So when you have sadhu sangha, when you have association of devotees, that is the first step where you can actually develop faith in devotional service in Krishna and realizing that you are part of Krishna. And we have seen the example of this in this particular chapter and in the previous chapter, where we see how Narad Muni, at a young age of just 5 years, because he got the association of the pure devotees, the Bhakti Vedantists, he actually was able to develop faith in Krishna. Right? So this exactly is what Prabhupada is talking about, that the seed of devotional service is sown by associating with devotees. And then the other important point that is being made in the purport is that once you reach this stage of devotional service, or this transcendental stage where you understand that this world is temporary, this body is temporary, but the soul is permanent, and you are developing that relation with the super soul, then you also start getting detached from worldliness. And like this, I picked up this quote from His Holiness Romapad Swami, where he says, when there is development of faith, we will also find the condition of detachment from worldly things. So it is a simultaneous process that is happening. One doesn't really have to work towards becoming detached. It is a natural subsequent process of developing faith. And we can see again in the example of Narad Muni, he was just a 5-year-old child when he lost his mother, who was his sole caregiver. He did not have any other person in the entire world except for his mother. But when he lost his mother, he had by then, because of the association of the Bhakti Vedantist, reached a stage where he looked at it as something that is auspicious in his life, that has been brought on by the Lord, so that he can progress in his spiritual journey. So what we have realized in the past, we've been studying Bhagavad Gita and Bhagavatam together now for almost 2 years, the same group. And we have realized that attachment for the material world is the greatest entanglement of the soul, of the spirit soul. But then the point is that how do we get rid of this attachment? caught in this. We know it, we realize it, but still we are not able to get rid of this attachment. Some philosophers say it's okay to be attached, it doesn't matter, just develop the faith in God and you will be liberated. And then on the other hand, you have another extreme which says you have to be completely detached. But not being attached to anything is artificial, because the natural nature of the soul is to be attached. So what Krishna consciousness is teaching us is that you don't be attached to material things. You start becoming attached to spiritual things. You start becoming attached to devotees, become attached to devotional service, become attached to reading these transcendental scriptures. And then what will happen is slowly you will see a shift. And I'm sure I remember discussing this in one of our sessions, that has it worked for you all, because the proof is in the pudding. You may say whatever, that the pudding is great, but unless you taste it, you will not accept what I am saying. And I remember a couple of you shared your own experiences where earlier you would be so attached to listening to like Bollywood songs. You no longer are attached to that. You don't want to go to the cinemas to watch movies because you have developed the higher taste. So the example that we can use from our material life also is that when you have weeds in the garden and you try to pluck the weeds out, they keep coming back again, right? So in the same way, unless you permanently detach yourself from material activities and attach yourself to spiritual activities, your senses will keep going back to the activities that give you pleasure, because that is the nature of the soul. The soul is always seeking pleasure. You see? So thus it is said that we just need to redirect our attachment, and that will then give us detachment. To the degree we will get attached to association, to the degree we will get attached to devotional service, we will naturally become immune from these objects of illusion that is in the material nature. And then detachment will also lead to, in the purport, Prabhupada says that then you will become free from the action of your deeds, your fruitive activities, because that also will happen because you are slowly purifying yourself. You're getting purified because you're performing devotional service. You're getting purified because now you are focusing only on how to please Krishna. You no longer are focusing on your senses or your sense gratification. Very important statement that is being made here is that one cannot see the Lord when one is in the material body. With our material eyes, we cannot get darshan of the Supreme Lord, because the Supreme Lord is spiritual. He's transcendental. And then Prabhupada is talking about how the material body can be transformed to a spiritual body. So what actually happens is that the devotee's body, although externally he is in the same material body, but because of performing devotional service, because he has purified himself, that same body becomes spiritual. And in the purport for verse 28 from the same chapter, Prabhupada is giving an example that Dhruva Maharaj and Prahlad Maharaj and many other devotees were able to see the personality of Godhead face to face, apparently in the same body. This means that the quality of a devotee's body changes from material to transcendence. Because you are executing pure devotional service, one can, in the same body, one is able to see the Lord. And Prabhupada has, of course, given examples of Dhruva Maharaj. I think most of you on this call know the story of Dhruva Maharaj. If there is anybody who would briefly like to speak about Dhruva Maharaj, how he finally got darshan of the Lord, it would be nice, so we can have like an interactive session. Anybody would like to share?
Hare Krishna, Mataji. Hare Krishna, everyone. Yes, Dhruva Maharaj, when he was 5 years old, he was playing with his stepbrother and his mother, Suruchi, who stepmother, Suruchi, he came and he found that Dhruva Maharaj was sitting on the lap of his father, the king. So Suruchi was very angry and he told Dhruva Maharaj to go to pray to the Lord so that next time he can take birth from her womb, then he will be allowed to sit on the lap of the king, his father. So Dhruva Maharaj was very upset, very angry, and he went to his mother, Suniti, who was the first wife of the king, whom the king has discarded. And then he started crying. But the mother gave a very good example to all of us here. The mother said, why do you want to sit on a lap that is like temporary? Why don't you seek to sit in the lap of the Lord, which is permanent? And then now both mothers has told him this. Suruchi said, go and pray to the Lord so that you get you take birth from my womb. And Suniti said, you go and find the Lord to sit on his lap. So Dhruva Maharaj, being a Kshatriya, very angry, he left home. And then he met Narad Muni on his way because he wanted to go to the forest where to meditate and find the Lord. And finally, when he started meditating, Narad Muni tried to discourage him not to go in the forest. So he was very adamant, he wanted to go. So finally he went, and then he started meditating, standing on one leg, not eating only fruits, and then stop eating fruits, some dry leaves, and then little water, and then stop breathing. And this caused disturbance in the atmosphere where all the demigods went to see Lord Narayan. And then they requested the Lord to appear in front of this little boy so that there's no more disturbances. So I'm cutting the story short, Mataji. It's very beautiful.
No, that's fine. That's fine.
Yes. So then the Lord appeared in front of him, and then he could not utter a single word. This boy who has been chanting the name of the Lord for so long, for 5-6 months, he could not utter a single word when he saw the Lord. And then the Lord touched the conch shell to his cheek, where he started praying, and then the Lord said, okay, so now ask for a boon, ask for whatever you want. So he said, why, my Lord? I came here for some broken pieces of glass. Now I have found the gem. What I'm going to do with those? Because in his mind, he wanted to get a kingdom bigger than his father and his grandfather and great-grandfather, who is Brahmaji. So now he didn't want anything. And then the Lord said, okay, even if you don't ask, I'm going to give you. And he gave him the pole star, which is still around, and that's the Dhruva Loka.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Indulekha Mataji. It's so nice to listen to the same story, but from other devotees, because it's like, even the words that I use is different. So it's nice, although we all know the story, but to listen and for me to repeat the same thing sometimes gets a bit monotonous. So it's very nice. Indulekha Mataji, thank you so much. So here we can see from this story that Dhruva Maharaj, in the current body that he was in, he was able to get darshan of Lord Krishna simply because he had this one-pointed devotion. He was following the instructions of his spiritual master. Very, very important to understand that we can only approach the Lord through the directions and instructions of our spiritual master. And so here we see that Dhruva Maharaj got darshan of the Lord. Then obviously Prabhupada is talking about Prahlad Maharaj. And again, we all know the story of Prahlad Maharaj, how little Prahlad was. There were so many, obstacles in his path. There were so many cruelties done to him by his own father. But not for a moment did anything deter him from his devotion to the Lord. And then in this same body, then he got darshan of Lord Narsingadev. And then finally, we also have an example from Mahaprabhu's Leela, where we have the story of Raghunath Das Goswami, who, as we all know, was born in a very rich family, but he was always hankering for the association of Mahaprabhu. And that is all that he ever wanted. There was nothing else that could actually hold him back. He had all the riches. He was even married off to a beautiful wife, so that something would deter him, something would hold him back, something would attract him. But nothing attracted him. All the time, his only meditation was how he can serve Mahaprabhu. And then eventually, finally, obviously, then he gets darshan. So the point here that is being made is that by purifying yourself, see, it is not this body which will get you anywhere, because this material body is temporary. However, these stories actually tell us that how we can use this temporary material body in order to perform devotional service to the Lord. And then in this body itself, one can get liberated. One can get the darshan of the Lord, and this body then transforms into a spiritual body. So the activities can help change that, right? And again, we've given the examples of how, again, I'll not go into the analogy a lot, but we've spoken about how the Prabhupada uses this analogy that how sometimes milk can give you an upset stomach, but that same milk, when it is used in the form of yogurt, curd, or other preparations like that, it can cure you. So this body that we have got limits us sometimes because it is obviously temporary. But if we use this for performing devotional service, then in this body itself, we can get the association of the Lord. And obviously, here we have Narad Muni has presented his case study. So what he's doing is, we all heard how Vyasdev was very, very despondent. He was not happy, although he had written all these great literatures. And Narad Muni straight away diagnosed the problem, because he said, you have not spoken about the Lord and his devotees. And here Narad Muni has given his own case study, that how just by associating with the devotees of the Lord, how my life changed, and how in my next life I became this transcendental space person, where I can travel everywhere. I don't have any limitations, and my only job is to go around making people devotees of the Lord. And Bhagavatam has got so many more such case studies, where if you read the stories of these devotees, you will see how they become liberated just because they have taken shelter of the Lord. So here we have the story of Ajamil. Everybody's heard the story of Ajamil. So what we are talking about over here is how one-pointed devotion to the Lord can actually protect you. We all know that Ajamil was a great Brahmana, learned, educated, was a devotee of the Lord, but eventually, because of whatever reasons, did start performing very, very abominable activities. However, at the time of death, from his deathbed, he called out the name of Narayan. Now we know that Narayan, he wasn't calling out to the Lord, he was actually calling out to his son. But look at the potency that the Lord's name has just by calling out Narayan. At that moment, the Vishnu Dutas appeared, and they did not allow the Yamadutas to take Ajamil. So when we are talking about association, yes, we talk about association of devotees, which is physical association, where you actually serve the Mahabhagavats, you serve the devotees of the Lord. Lord Krishna in many places says that he is much more happier if we serve his devotees rather than trying to serve him directly. He's happy to see us serving the devotees. So that is one kind of association. But the other kind of association is associating with the name of the Lord. So many times we speak about this, how the name is non-different to the Lord himself. I'm sure all of you realize that. For me, it is very difficult. Although I hear this and I say it, that the name is non-different, I don't realize it, and I don't practice chanting in that way. I don't practice chanting thinking that here I am associating with the Lord. I pray someday And I beg for all of you to pray for me that someday I'm able to chant with that mood where I realize that the name is non-different. So here we can see how Ajamil was protected just by chanting the name of the Lord Narayan. And then here we have the story of Jadabharat. Now we all, again, so many times we have repeated the story on this chat session, but for anybody who is new, and obviously it's always nice to hear the story again. So Jadabharat was King Bharat. He left his kingdom because he was a self-realized person. He went into the forest to perform austerities and to realize the Lord. But unfortunately, in the forest, he got attached to a deer. And then at the time of death, because he was constantly thinking of the deer, in his next life, he took the body of a deer. However, due to his good fortune, he was able to remember his last life. And although he was in the body of an animal, where we discuss and we speak that animal does not have the intelligence to judge what is good or bad for him, but because he could remember his past life, invariably in the jungle, he would always search for association of sadhus. He would always try and be close to where the ashrams of the sadhus were, where they were performing various kind of austerities. And because of that, when he left the body of a deer, he became Jadbharat, who was self-realized from the time he was born, and he knew that he did not want to waste his this human form of life in doing anything. He portrayed an image to the outside world that he's absolutely dumb and he doesn't know anything. However, internally, he was the most realized person. And that came to fore when once he was asked to carry the palanquin of the king. And he was actually, when he was walking, he was jumping. And the king was very angry with him because it was disturbing him. And he asked him, why are you walking like this? Do you have no energy? Do you have no strength to carry? And then Jadabharat actually, after being insulted like that, not that he did it because he was insulted, but because he was such a self-realized soul, and all self-realized people want to only just try and bring the entire world closer to Krishna. So he started speaking the philosophy and giving instructions to the king, where he said that, there are ants on this path, and they are also living entities, and I cannot kill them because they are part and parcel of Krishna. And this way, then the king changed, and obviously then he paid his obeisances to Jadabharat. But what I'm trying to show over here is that just by remembering his past activities of devotion and austerities to Krishna, in this life he was able to then come close to Krishna and was able to get liberated and go back to Krishna. So the different ways of associating. And the very famous story of Gajendra the elephant. I mean, all the stories of Bhagavatam are inspiring, but this is one of the most inspiring stories where an animal, when he's caught, in this life and death situation, obviously in the beginning, he struggles thinking he's so strong and he can get out of it. He's expecting help from his relatives who are all standing on the banks of this river, but there is nobody who can do anything. There's nobody who can help him at all. He is in the jaws of the crocodile and he cannot get out of it no matter how much strength he uses. And in the end, when he realizes that there is nothing left to it, he remembers the past prayers that he knew, because in his past life, he was a great devotee of the Lord. He was King Indrayumna. And he remembered his prayers and he started reciting those prayers and totally surrendered to the will of the Lord. And at that time, we see that then Lord Krishna comes to protect him. He kills the crocodile and, he saves Gajendra. So here we can see the association of the prayers. He remembered the prayers that he used to recite in his last life. And that association then gave him this liberation. And then finally, we have, wow, I can't remember the name. I can't remember the name.
Ambarish Maharaj,
Ambarish Maharaj. Thank you so much.
Durvasa Muni.
Thank you. It just wasn't coming to my mind. So the story of Ambarish Maharaj and Durvasa Muni. So we've heard this story also how on the day of Dwadashi, when Ambarish Maharaj was about to break his fast, Durvasa Muni came there with his associates, and Ambarish Maharaj, offering obeisance to Durvasa Muni, and then he said that he has to prepare to welcome him, to offer him prasad. And Durvasa Muni said he will come back after having a bath in the river. And Ambarish Maharaj was standing there, but the time to break the fast was going past. And then he was advised by his ministers that if you drink a sip of water, you don't actually insult Durvasa Muni, but at the same time, you are also being faithful to the fast that you have taken. So you can drink this water. And he did. And Durvasa Muni, being all knowing, he had all the siddhis, he knew what he's done. And Durvasa Muni was very, very angry that you have not treated a guest properly. And so he cursed. He cursed him. He pulled out his hair, and the big demon came, and he was about to kill Ambarish Maharaj. And obviously at that time, we know the story that Krishna is the protector. And if Krishna protects you, nobody can kill you. And obviously, if Krishna is there to kill you, nobody can protect you. And so Krishna sent his Sudarshan Chakra. And, his Sudarshan Chakra, then obviously the story goes that Durvasa Muni realized his mistake. He was trying to take shelter of Lord Shiva and, others, but nobody could help him. Even Lord Krishna himself said, you have to go back to Ambarish Maharaj. So this picture shows how Durvasa Muni finally comes back and begs forgiveness from Ambarish Maharaj. So here you can see that because of his one-pointed devotion to Lord Krishna is Bhaktavatsala. What does he want? He just wants the love of his devotees. And here he has sent his Sudarshan Chakra, which is non-different to himself, to protect Ambarish Maharaj. So I've just picked up a few well-known stories from the Bhagavatam to just show you how associating with the name of the Lord, associating with the prayers of the Lord, performing one-pointed devotional service to the Lord, in this life itself, one can get the darshan of the Lord, one can get liberated. So in this verse, particularly, the points that are important and that we should remember is that seeds of devotional service, I'm just going to stop sharing. Seeds of devotional service can only be sown by devotees of the Lord. And thus, each and every one of us should always, always hanker for the association of devotees. By performing devotional service, the byproduct is that one will develop detachment for the material world, but will develop attachment for the Lord himself, for the Lord and the Lord's associates. The results of the fruitive actions also will reduce and diminish eventually because you are performing devotional service. And then, like how Narad Muni is presenting his own case study to Vyasadeva to encourage him to write about Krishna and his devotees, likewise, for all of us, by reading the Srimad Bhagavatam, by listening to these stories of Krishna's devotees and their interaction with the Lord himself, it encourages us also to come to that stage where we only hanker for performing devotional service to please the Lord's senses and become detached from pleasing our own senses. So in summary, this is what we should be taking away from this particular verse. Thank you very much. It is 36 past 8. I've gone 5 minutes over. If there's any questions or comments, corrections, please unmute yourselves and ask the questions. It's always nice if there are any questions. Helps us to remember.
Hare Krishna Mataji.
Hare
My
Krishna.
humble obeisances unto you.
I obey.
All glory to Srila Prabhupada. Thank you for the wonderful, wonderful class. You give such lovely class, flawless, absolutely, with a flow, without any break. So nice.
No,
Very nice.
I
Wonderful.
struggle,
Thank you so
Rupa
much.
Mataji. I struggle. It is all thanks to our previous, I just take things. That's it. Copy paste, like I always say.
Thank you very much. Okay, Mataji, I'll ask a question which is a bit unrelated. I mean, not unrelated, but from the purport, if I may. Yeah. So in the purport, Prabhupada writes, okay, so I don't know which line it is, but okay, it's written here. I don't know where the start of it is, which are hardly okay. So it's talking about the Vedas, that side. Okay, so in the Vedas and the Upanishads, there are only indirect hints to all this. So in the Srimad Bhagavatam, everything is very clearly mentioned that Krishna is the supreme personality of Godhead, and all the great exalted devotees, how they prayed to Krishna. So it's very like you can say, in a way, it is kind of easily for everyone to understand. It's very easy in a way. So why was the Vedas and the Upanishads, they are just giving indirect hints? Because then the whole mass of people, like we see in India, they are like called Trivedis and Divedis and Chaturvedis. So they have done the way, the Brahmanas from long time ago, they did one Veda, two Veda, whatever. They had so much knowledge, but why was it indirect and not given to the masses? This just simple knowledge of Krishna is the supreme personality of Godhead, and this is kind of just what we are doing in Krishna consciousness. Why was it not there?
So
That's my first question. So
yeah,
okay, sorry. That's my first question. And the second question is, like I have heard, like when devotees are neophyte, they sometimes get like if they do a little bit of devotional service, they get reciprocation very fast, and you're just elated that something has happened and Krishna has really helped me and something like that. But when like they become sannyasis, Maya tests them more. Like they are more in the the Maya tests them, so that I can understand that to go to Krishna you have to be absolutely pure in Shuddha Sattva. I think that's why Maya is more strong, and then then you are really tested. So why is that? That's my question.
Okay. So your first question about why Vedas and Upanishads and this, that, it's so. So now in the Bhagavad Gita, we studied the Bhagavad Gita, and the 9th chapter says the most confidential knowledge.
Yeah.
Right? Now,
Yeah.
why is the subject? Why is the chapter entitled the most confidential knowledge, where it is actually being given out so openly to everybody? The point is that many times we talk about this. The sun rises every day. The sun rises every day, sets every day. If I hide myself in the cave, is it the fault of the sun that I'm not getting the sunshine?
Yeah.
You see what I mean? So
Yeah.
the problem is that because all of us are at different stages in our spiritual journey and spiritual life, so of course we have scriptures which will cater to all kinds of different people. And that is why it is said that Bhagavad Gita is the cream of all this knowledge, and it is only the most intelligent people who are willing to accept this knowledge. This knowledge is readily available to everybody. Why then it is being called confidential? Why is it called Rajavidya? Rajavidya Rajguhyam. Why? You see, so you can use the analogy of the sun and understand it by that the sun is rising for everybody. It is willing to give its sunshine to everybody. But if a person decides to hide in the cave and then complain that I am not getting any sunlight over here, but you've chosen to hide in the cave, right? So that was the first thing. Like I said, everybody is at different stages, and the Vedas, Upanishads also have the Karma Kanda section. Now one may think, why do you have to have Karma Kanda section? Why are we being asked to pray to the demigods, and the demigods will give us the results? Because these are the stages of your spiritual journey. Everybody immediately does not reach right on top. Prabhupada, we are very fortunate that Prabhupada is giving us this process where he says, just take the elevator. Otherwise, we have to use the staircase. So each rung of the staircase is the Vedas and Upanishads. It is at least giving us these understandings, this knowledge that there is God, there is somebody superior to you who is going to give you these benedictions so that you can live in this human form of light. you don't think that you get everything on your own. It is because the demigods are giving you this. The rain god is doing this, and sun god is doing this. So these are the stages which are given. But if a person is intelligent, then he just takes the elevator and goes straight to the Supreme and understands the Bhagavatam. And that's why Bhagavatam is the cream of knowledge. Okay.
Yes, Mataji. Thank you so
Now-
much. That was absolutely brilliant answer.
No
Thank you so
problem.
much. Thank you.
Then the second question, what was your second question? You said
About sometimes like neophytes sometimes get reciprocation very fast, and it's kind of you can say easy, like you do some devotional service and you get so much bliss and all that. But I've heard that when sannyasis, or they are tested more, like Maya is like more strong and
so.
that kind of thing.
Again, I'll give you a very simple material analogy. When a child enters school, when he starts school, say when he is 6 years old and he goes to the year 1 and year 2, at that time his mathematics problems would be like addition and subtraction, like 2 plus 2 is 4, and 3 minus 1 is 2, and whatever else, right? But when he progresses and he reaches year 10, year 11, and if he takes maths in university, then those problems are something which I cannot comprehend at all. So the point what we're trying to make is that you are aiming for the best. If you are aiming for the best, you cannot expect that your journey will be very, very simple and straightforward. Obviously, if you're aiming for the best, you have to prove yourself that you have that kind of intelligence. When we're talking about, let's say, even the material world, if you're aiming to get a maths degree, or if you're aiming to get a law degree or something like that, which requires a different kind of intelligence, or if you're aiming to become an artist, you will be tested. A 6-year-old drawing a flower and coloring it pink is amazing. But if a year 10 student is going to draw a flower and color it just pink, it'll be considered, no, this is not the standard. So you are expecting that child in year 10 to give you shades of pink, different shades, you see? So that way, there are so many layers, even in spiritual life, there are so many layers. In the beginning, Krishna is enticing you, like how a fisherman with a hook, he has a worm attached to the hook in order to attract the fish. So Krishna and our acharyas do that in order to attract the conditioned souls. They give us this chance where you can actually see some kind of reciprocation and you become interested. So it is like, when the fish is getting the worm, it clings on to that worm because it thinks it's going to get something more. And we unfortunately we are conditioned in such a way that we will not move forward unless we think we're going to get something out of it. Our material conditioning is such strong that we don't want to move forward or progress unless we see that we're getting something out. And so Krishna is very smart. We are all made in the image of Krishna. So what he does is he gives us this. But when we start progressing, we realize that it is not about us. It is not about my desires or my conditioning. It is about Krishna. And at that time, then you start getting tested in your spiritual life.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Hope that makes sense.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna, Madhu Kumari. Please accept my obeisances.
My obeisance.
Thank you. Thank you for the wonderful class, always. I just related to your answer. I just remember when we started having our Bhagavad Gita class at the beginning of our KC, and there was a Prabhu who used to come to our house every Sunday, and there were different people who used to ask these questions about why this, why this. And they said, yeah, the sun is there, outside, like you have explained. Sun is there, but if somebody is hiding, how can they see the sun?
Yeah.
And so similarly, he gave an example. Is the sun is there and you are closed yourself in a room, you don't want to go out, and somebody with the knowledge, he said, there is sunshine, there is sun outside. I don't believe it. I don't believe it. And then he keep on, insisting, no, there's no sun there. And suddenly the person with the, the torch of knowledge, he kind of breaks the wall and the sunshine comes. And as soon as he sees the sun, he gets blind. So when we are immature, and if it comes too much, then we won't be able to handle that knowledge. So there are different scripture. I mean, everything is coming from our Vedas. I'm just repeating what I heard.
No, correct. Yeah, very nice. Very nice.
Everything is there, but not everybody can understand those.
Correct.
So that's why, I mean, we are very fortunate that we are in Srila Prabhupada's, taken shelter of Srila Prabhupada. And Srila Prabhupada has given us the cream of all the Vedic knowledge, which is Srimad Bhagavatam.
Yes, yes.
So we are kind of beginning to understand the way Srila Prabhupada has given us the Bhagavad Gita. Nobody has written so many thousands of people becoming Krishna conscious. It's the pure devotee giving us the highest knowledge. That's why we come to know all these things, because they were there, but there are other people who could understand a bit, but not the way Srila Prabhupada has taught us.
Yeah.
So it's just, thank you very much for your wonderful.
Thank you, Balika Mataji, for sharing this. Thank you so much.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Any other comments or questions? Okay, so everybody is satisfied with this verse. Thank you very much. Vancha kalpatrubhascha kripa sindhubheva cha patitanam pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Anantavoti Vaishnavindiki.
Thank you, Mataji.
Thank you, Mataji. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. Thank you, Mataji.
Hare Krishna, Mataji. Thank you so much.
Thank you.